Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Annie, and I'm a Senior Product Manager at Faculty AI. I'm super excited to be here today to tell you about a really interesting project that we've been running with the UK government using artificial intelligence to counter terrorist propaganda. But before I get into the details of the project, you probably haven't heard of Faculty. We're a relatively small company, so I want to give you a little bit of an intro to who we are and what we do. So, Faculty is an applied AI company, and we work across a range of sectors, as you can see by all of the labels on that screen. But one of our biggest growth areas is in national security, which is where I work. So, what does an applied AI company actually do? So, we work with our clients, first of all, to understand what are their challenges, what are they trying to achieve, what are the problems that they face. And then we work with them to take data and to create high-performing artificial intelligence solutions to solve those problems. Faculty holds a really kind of unique space in the market. We actually started life 10 years ago as an education company. So we worked with PhDs, postdoctoral researchers, helping them transition out of academia into the world of business. So basically taking their data science skills that they'd honed in an academic setting and applying that to industry. In so doing that, we slowly kind of migrated into a services business, which is what we do today. We work directly with clients to give them the best-in-class AI tools. But we haven't forgotten our educational roots. We still run our programs every 2 or 3 a year where we help PhD students transition out of academia, and we maintain incredibly close ties with kind of top-tier academic institutions as well. So we recruit heavily from those institutions, and we also collaborate on a lot of projects with them as well. So I want to tell you a little bit about the project now, and particularly the problems that we were looking to solve, undertaking this work. So the project was run in conjunction with 2 teams in the UK government, a team in the Home Office, Research, Intelligence and Communications Unit, or RICU, and then also a team within the Foreign Office, the Counter-Daesh cell. And we were working with CT analysts in these teams to help them counter some of the day-to-day problems that they face. So the 3 problems that we were looking to help them with are on the screen. First of all, difficulties in accessing propaganda. So there's not one nice, neat, easy place for these analysts to actually access the propaganda that Daesh and Al-Qaeda are putting out into the ecosystem. So that was the first kind of real challenge that they had. Second of all, I'm sure you're all aware, the majority of this content is not published in English, and actually kind of quite a small proportion of these teams were Arabic speakers. So that then encounters huge problems with actually getting that content into an accessible format into English for most of these analysts to work with. So first of all, there's lead times in getting these items translated, but it's also really expensive to do as well. So it's actually a huge outlay for the UK government. And then finally, as I'm sure you're all aware, I'm preaching to the choir here, there's a huge amount of volume and content that is put out into the ecosystem. So being able to understand, first of all, one document, which is often pretty lengthy, in isolation is a challenge, but being able to understand the overall broader narratives that these organizations are looking to kind of spread throughout the communication networks is really challenging. So being able to do broader thematic analysis is something, or a skill, or a capability that these teams just don't really have today. So our challenge, they came to Faculty and said, what can you do? And they didn't give us very long to do it. They gave us 12 weeks and said, help us in that time create a web application which uses artificial intelligence, so generative AI, I'm sure you've heard a lot about that already, on a data set of official Daesh and Al-Qaeda propaganda to help us access that more easily, to help us interrogate it more easily, but also to help us augment our own thinking with AI-generated insights. So that was the challenge that we had in 12 weeks. And what we built was a web application, a live tool called Propaganda Checker, or Prop Checker for short. So this is a live application which is currently used by UK analysts at the moment, helping them do everything I've just explained. So I'll talk a little bit about how it works, and then I will actually go into a live demo and show you it for real. And actually, we'll need a little bit of audience participation for anyone who is willing. So Prop Checker ingests articles from two websites, Jihadology and Al Raud, and does that ingestion on a weekly basis, and we ingest across a whole range of different media types. So PDFs, MP4s, and MP3s. That's the first step. The next thing we do is something called content extraction. So as you can see, there are lots of different data types there. We need to get that data into a format that a machine can read. So things like speech-to-text transcription, things like optical character recognition, getting information that's potentially contained within images into a setting that a machine can then read. We then translate it. So this is using one of the best-in-class translation engines in the market. We translate everything into English. And then the final step is then using AI modeling to apply a whole range of techniques to draw out insights. So I've talked that through in about 30 seconds and made it sound incredibly simple. If my engineers were with me here, they would be rolling their eyes. It was an incredibly, challenging task. Each one of these boxes on the screen required a lot of technical excellence, particularly the translation. And I'm happy to talk about or answer any questions about some of the challenges we faced there. So what does the tool actually do then? So Prop Checker has really changed how analysts can, first of all, just access propaganda. It's a full repository of translated material. We had 28 languages when we ingested, and all of that is then translated into English for anyone to access. It is fully searchable, so you can search by keywords, topics, themes, names of individuals that are of interest, titles of articles. So you can find that with a click of a button, which previously was not a capability. And then finally, the ingest is run on a weekly basis. So this is an up-to-date tool every week, getting more and more content. So this can be a one-stop shop for this type of propaganda. So at its core, this is a huge capability uplift, and there isn't a huge amount of fancy AI in this part. Like just giving this capability, this repository was a huge step forwards for this particular user group. But then on top of it, so all of the things at the bottom of the screen in the pink, if you can just about see it, with the AI techniques that we applied on top of it to really make it easier for an analyst to extract insight from the fuller corpus. So we perform something called topic modeling, which is looking across the corpus in its entirety, but also individual documents themselves to understand and identify what are the key themes within those documents and across the entire corpus themselves. So enabling thematic analysis, which has not previously been accessible to these groups before. We do something called summarization. So this is taking large documents and summarizing those into much easier to digest and understand kind of bite-sized summaries. So this is using generative AI or large language models, which I'm sure you guys have heard about over the last few days. This obviously is a huge time saver for a lot of analysts. These documents can be, a couple of pages long, but, on the other end of the spectrum, some of them are like 800 pages long. So as with any government department, there's only a few analysts working on this. They don't have a lot of time. They need to, at a glance, be able to understand whether or not this is something of interest to them and whether it needs further analysis. And this shorter summarization of each document is a really great way of them being able to do that. And then the final feature is a counter-terrorist chatbot assistant. So across the whole corpus, we have built a chatbot which can answer a whole range of different questions about the propaganda across which it sits. So it can answer questions about sentiment, it can answer questions comparing the views between different fractions, it can answer questions about how views and things have changed over time, and it can also search and retrieve. So this is just another way for analysts to dive into the material and get the insights that they need. So I'm actually going to change tack a little bit now and move into the tool itself, and to give a live demonstration of all of the features I've just spoken to you about. So what you're looking at here is the homepage for Prop Checker, and we understand the workflow of our analysts, and most are usually coming with a particular agenda in mind. They're doing a project, they have a particular set of search criteria. So I'm just going to search for a keyword. Migration has been something of interest of late, and what that brings you to is a set of search results. So first of all, you can see how that search or how that particular term has been reflected in the corpus over time, and then if I scroll down, you can see all of the propaganda within the corpus itself. So a couple of things I want to kind of highlight as how these are represented. So first of all, you can see, what type of media it is. This is a video, or you can see which faction has published this, if it belongs to a particular publication, and then what you can see here is the actual summary itself. So at a glance, before I've even clicked into anything, I can, as an analyst, read through and understand the overall the overall setting and the overall sentiment of this particular article. And then also it has a list of all the different topics. So the idea behind this is enabling an analyst to kind of scan through and understand what it is they would like to, which one of these articles they would like to do a deeper dive in. So there's a whole range of filters you can apply, and my client in particular, the counter-Daesh cell, obviously focused on Daesh. There's a particularly nice document I want to show. So once you click in to one of these pages, you can then see the full article itself in its original Arabic, but also the fully translated article itself. So you can do a side-by-side compare. The other, I think, really key thing or really interesting feature for the tool is that we also give analysts access to the original piece of propaganda itself. It looks like the internet's been a little bit slow. Always the risk with a live demo. But you'll have to take my word that this would be showing you the live the original piece of propaganda. So anyone who is an Arabic speaker can come and see that for themselves. And I think what's particularly important here is that this is all contained within our within the prop checker environment. So this isn't outsourcing you to like an Al Raud or another like nefarious website. It is safe for analysts to access, so that is really important. The next part of this the demo that I want to talk about is then our prop chatter counter-terrorist co-analyst. So in the example I've just talked about here, as we perhaps say we've looked at this article, this is something of interest, we want to know a little bit more. If I click on this button here, this takes me to to our chatbot interface. So here I can ask it any number of questions. We've got a pre-programmed question here for it to ask, and so I'm hoping now that this actually works, given the internet was a little slow. But what this does now is answer the question, what is the key theme for this particular piece of propaganda? So this now has then provided a more detailed summary of this piece of propaganda, and I can then go ahead, ask it more questions, interrogate, deep dive further. So let me take you back to the homepage. On the homepage, the route I've just talked you through was when an analyst is coming with a very specific idea of what it is they're looking to search for. That's not always the case. We're aware that some analysts are just more interested in keeping abreast of the latest news. So the way that analysts can do that is this front page here basically acts as a news feed, essentially, for the latest propaganda. So this is all, like I said, updated weekly on a Sunday night. That's when it runs. It could run more frequently if we wanted it to, but weekly was the kind of the arbitrary time that we settled on. So this whole screen here is then like the news feed, essentially, which which an analyst, depending on their area of interest, can filter down to particular affiliates. So if I come back to prop chatter, there's a couple of questions that I've pre-prepared, and Elliot's going to feed me one in a minute to do this live. So one of the key questions I asked it earlier was, based on the documents within the corpus, how is Daesh portraying detention camps and in which some of its fighters are currently held within Iraq and Syria? And some of the key things about this I want to call out is that this answer is deliberately kind of broken down, or we've coded it in a way that it's deliberately broken down to feed you the response in a set of kind of numbered bullet points. So then you're able, as an analyst, to kind of quickly read through, decide which is most interesting, and if there's anything else you need to follow up on. Finally, on this, all of the answers are referenced. I'm sure you've heard a lot about kind of hallucinations and how trustworthy is AI and kind of the black box. With any type of large language model, that is always a risk, and it is something that users of artificial intelligence need to be aware of. But one of the key ways that we kind of protect against that is by referencing all of the articles of which this answer is based on. So an analyst can see, and within the text, it's referencing particularly which articles it's drawing that information from. So if there is something of particular interest, an analyst can always go back to cross-check that response. So now is the time for a live demo, and Elliot, we're going to think about a question for me to get started with, and then I might take one from the audience, depending on how well this goes.
Well, I have a feeling, looking at there, that so the question I was actually based on Zahed and what we were talking about before, and do I have to ask it in a specific way? Do I just, okay.
I'll do the translation.
How, for example, how has Daesh communications changed since last October to today? I don't know how I'd word that in a...
I'll put the 7th of October, 2023. And I'm assuming it's with respect to the conflict in Gaza that you're...
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Right. So while that is waiting to give us a response, it usually takes kind of 10 to 15 seconds per se, depending on how well this internet's going to work for us. I'll explain a little bit about how this is working in the background. So the class of artificial intelligence that this is using is something called a large language model, and how it works is that it's based on a technology called neural networks, which is basically simulating how the brain works. So whenever you ask it a question, even if I asked it the same question twice, I will still get two slightly different answers, in the same way that if I asked any one of you a question and then asked you the same question 10 minutes later, you're probably not going to give me verbatim the same answer. It works in a very similar way. So that's a key point to be aware of when using these types of tools. It's also not infallible, right? I think the way I explain about how to use these types of tools is treat it like a really smart graduate. The better the quality of questions, so being specific about which time frames you're interested in, like if it's a particular, group, be explicit, say, Daesh Central, rather than just they, for example. Like, the better the quality of the question you get, the better the quality of the answer. Speaking of quality of answer, then it's done me proud, and we've got a response. So this is now something that, if I was, particularly interested in wanting to explore more about the communication style between mid-2024 onwards, I would ask it a follow-up question, and you can converse with it in a similar way to ChatGPT, but like I said, very specific to CT. So. Has anyone got a question that they would like to pose to Prop Chatter? Within the realm of counterterrorism and Daesh and Al-Qaeda, outside of that, it's probably not going to help you. Please, go ahead.
I want to know if Daesh is using the crisis in Gaza as a recruiting tool to increase recruitment.
All right. So you probably noticed there I appended based on the corpus. So as I mentioned earlier, the way that a large language model is is built, is trained, it has an intrinsic intelligence. It kind of has a general knowledge. The way that we have then coded this, or the way the constraints we put around this large language model, is that we then make sure that when it answers a question, it only answers a question based off the evidence and the corpus of propaganda that we have fed it. So in the same way that, if I was asked a question, I could make an assertion about what I think the answer is, or I could turn around and do the research, based off evidence to give you that answer. That's what we have hard-coded this tool to do. So that protects against things like hallucinations, and basically just improves the robustness and the reliability of this tool. So keen to see what the jury says basically on the quality of this answer. Wonderful. So we're pretty much we've got about 5 minutes. 5 minutes left, and I've shown you everything that I wanted to with the tool, and we've had one question. I would love to open to the floor now for any further questions, either to put to Prop Chatter or more generally about the project. Please go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan Russell, the Violence Prevention Network in Germany. This is great. What are you building next?
What a great question. So this was the product of 12 weeks of hard work. I can tell you it gave me a few grey hairs doing it so quickly. But we have a long list of features to build out on this. This is very much just the beginning of this tool. We are looking to expand the data sources through which it ingests. So not just Al-Qaeda and Daesh, but to other VOs as well, but also looking to expand it out to academic literature as well. There's a huge advantage here, or kind of opportunity, I should say, to ingesting kind of different types of data, as well as social media data as well. One of the key things we're looking into next is understanding how, basically what is the engagement around these pieces of propaganda that are being pushed out into the ecosystem, and how are fighters or individuals kind of educating themselves around this, and what are the narratives that are actually kind of propagating through into the spheres of communication. So that's one of the next avenues that we're taking this down.
There's, over here and then over there.
Oh.
Hi, Elias Pagani from MNC Saatchi World Services. I was curious also on the theme of data sources. Is all of this taken from open source material?
Yes.
Or okay, so there's no there was no consideration of kind of seeking to gain entry to closed channels like Telegram groups or anything like that.
At this stage, it's been focused purely on open source material, but looking down the line, looking to access more closed sources as well is absolutely one of the opportunities, as I was saying a moment ago, that we're looking to pursue. It's obviously of key interest to the UK government.
Lady over there.
Hi. Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hi.
Reading point number 4, criticizing other groups, I wonder what is the stance of Daesh, which is a Sunni group, on the Hezbollah-Israel conflict, given that Hezbollah is a prominent Shia group.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you want me to ask it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You're going to have to say that again, sorry.
What is the stance of Daesh, given that they're Sunni, on the conflict of Hezbollah and Israel, with Hezbollah being a prominent Shia group?
You're going to have to slow down, I'm afraid. So what is the stance of guys, given they're Sunni, on the what, sorry?
On the Hezbollah-Israel conflict. Given Hezbollah is Shia.
Conflict. All right. Okay. While it's thinking, I can maybe take another question. But thank you very much.
Just at the back, because that's for ease, and then...
A very quick one. Ross came from Iron 2. I was actually wondering if you could do the same thing, but with AQAP with regards to the Houthis, especially with the current conflict and degeneration in the region. if that's possible.
I
All right.
We could have done an entire roundtable with just.
Yes, I think we could. There we go. Got an answer for you there. I think, in the interest of time, we have 1 minute. Is
there another question about the platform itself? This gentleman here. Sorry.
Organizations put out a lot of propaganda. And one of the things that's super interesting to me is to figure out which propaganda is resonating and what's effective, because that's where you
100%.
build your counter narratives. So is there a mechanism in here of understanding how strong and resonant propaganda is?
So it's a great question. And as it currently stands, no. But that's the next phase of development for this piece of work, is to understand, like, through basically further data acquisition, of other sources, so of closed groups, to understand what narratives are basically percolating and propagating throughout the communication channels, because you're exactly right. There's a huge amount of information that's put out, but the core goal of the teams that I work with are to create counter narratives, basically to prevent, either to prevent radicalization, or to reverse it. So being able to pinpoint what are the key messages that people are mobilizing behind is super important. So as it currently stands, kind of phase 1 of this tool doesn't do that, but the next phase of work, which we should be kicking off hopefully within the next 6 weeks, is very much focused on understanding what are the things, what are the narratives, and what are the propaganda messages that are kind of making the leap, getting the most traction. So then that insight is available to our client organizations.
Because it's one of the popularity, right? Donald Trump's got propaganda that says they're eating dogs in one part of the country, and there's propaganda about immigration. And eating the dog probably gets a lot more views because it's so silly, but it's not very resonant. But amongst his followers, it's just interesting to find out especially if you're trying to create counter narratives. So good luck with that.
Thank you. It is a challenge.
And that's actually quite an interesting question to hold as we go into our next panel. Please, thank you, Annie, for walking us through Prop Checker this afternoon. That was very interesting.
Thank you.